What's going on, everybody? Welcome back into the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. My name is Lucas Wenzel, and today we're going to be talking about 10 players on the waiver wire I am looking to stash ahead of this weekend's slate and ahead of next week's waivers as well. But before we dive into any of that, if you want your chance at winning a signed Justin Jefferson Minnesota Vikings jersey, courtesy of our friends over at Pristine Auction, you need to subscribe to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel right now and comment below on this video. That's it. That's all you need to do. We'll be announcing a winner right here on the channel, so make sure to turn on those notifications so you can be alerted when new episodes are up and to claim your prize when we announce it. Let's start with San Francisco 49ers running back Tyrion Davis-Price, who's rostered in only 4% of leagues. Elijah Mitchell is now out for the year with an MCL sprain, paving the way for TDP to potentially be the primary backup to Christian McCaffrey, as he was in Week 7. I'm fully aware Davis-Price has been a healthy scratch the past 2 weeks in favor of Jordan Mason, but I believe that has more to do with Mason's role on special teams than it does Kyle Shanahan's pecking order. Also, as of this recording, CMC hasn't practiced yet this week. Now, that doesn't mean he won't suit up for Sunday, but it makes TDP all the more intriguing of a stash. I've said this in numerous videos now, but this is the time of year we want to stash our studs backups just in case they miss any time. Pay attention to reports this week though, since as of this recording, a backup hasn't been named yet. Next on the list is David Bell, rookie wide receiver for the Cleveland Browns, who's likely available in your league because he's only 1% rostered. Bell has sneakily seen 5 or more targets in 3 consecutive weeks now. It's not a 100% guarantee, but I want to believe with the $230 million the Browns have tied up in Deshaun Watson, this team will start throwing the ball more considering they're 25th in pass play percentage this year. Bell's snap percentages of 63 and 64% have been season highs over the past 2 weeks as well. And looking at his schedule rest of season, this Browns team gets a juicy stretch for wide receivers against the Ravens, Saints, Commanders, and Steelers to close out the season. Jaylen Warren is a frequent flyer on my waiver wire stashes, and I'm still baffled his roster percentage is still only at 21%. I remain adamant on this. Wherever Najee Harris is owned, Jaylen Warren should be owned as well. Najee Harris suffered what was deemed an abdominal injury on Monday Night Football against the Colts and is now listed as questionable for Week 13 with an oblique injury. As of this recording, he hasn't practiced yet this week. Warren, on the other hand, is back healthy and practiced in full. Benny Snell did fine relief work in Week 12, but it's Warren who's been cutting into Najee's work as of recent, totaling 87 rushing yards on 15 carries and 65 receiving yards on 6 receptions the 2 weeks prior to his Week 12 absence. And to top it all off, the upcoming schedule for Steelers running backs looks great, getting the Falcons, Panthers, Raiders, and Browns in 4 of their final 6 games, who are all bottom 10 in schedule-adjusted fantasy points allowed to running backs. Romeo Doubs returned to practice earlier this week, and I know Christian Watson has been scorching hot, but I think Doubs is worth a stash. Let's not forget Doubs was the number 1 wide receiver in this Packers offense prior to his injury, playing at least 82% of the snaps in every matchup between weeks 3 through 8, while seeing 7+ targets in 4 of those games. This isn't a promise that Doubs regains his hold as the wide receiver 1 in Green Bay, but in upcoming matchups with the Bears, Rams, Vikings, and Lions, there's a real chance he becomes fantasy relevant once again this year. If you're a Dalvin Cook manager and Alexander Mattison isn't on your roster, you need to make sure he is ASAP. Nothing about Madison's stats scream standalone value. He hasn't topped 30% of snaps in a game since Week 5. However, Dalvin Cook hasn't played a full season in his entire career. Now, I'm not an injury predictor and I never wish injury upon a player, but with a track record like that, I want to make sure my stud running back in Dalvin Cook is insured going into the fantasy playoffs should anything happen to him. We saw it with Samaje Perine and Rachaad White this past week, that these capable backups can produce fantasy relevant weeks when they're called upon to be the lead back. Handcuffs are important now more than ever, so make sure you are stashing Alexander Mattison. Is the wide receiver 1 for the Atlanta Falcons not actually Drake London, but Olamide Zaccheaus? I say that about 99% sarcastically, but I think it would be silly not to note that Zaccheaus' target share skyrocketed in the team's first game without Kyle Pitts. He led the team with 8 targets while catching 5 of them for 91 yards against the Commanders. Zacchaeus hadn't seen more than 4 targets in a game this year, but his efficiency metrics have been fairly impressive. Albeit on only 39 targets, he's 17th amongst wide receivers in yards per route run, 14th in yards per reception, and 2nd in yards per target. Even his fantasy efficiency metrics are eye-catching, as he's 28th in fantasy points per target and 5th in fantasy points per route run. Zacchaeus isn't a sexy stash by any stretch of the imagination, but in deeper leagues, he could be a great depth piece going down the stretch. Joshua Kelly was activated off the IR and active on Sunday against the Cardinals, and is maybe the backup to Austin Eckler? It's somewhat unclear, but he received one more opportunity in the passing game than Spiller, who's been on my stash list in previous weeks, and he also played more snaps. If you do have Austin Eckler, I think Kelly is worth the stash to make sure the number 1 overall running back in fantasy football this year is insured, and you're not scrambling later should anything happen to Eckler. As of this recording, Richie James hasn't practiced yet this week as he's dealing with a knee injury, but he stepped up on Thanksgiving in the absence of Wan'Dale Robinson, playing 70% of the snaps. He tied Darius Slayton for the team high in targets with 6 and caught a touchdown as well. We've seen Richie James have fantasy success to start the year as he caught 5 of 6 targets for 50 plus yards in the first 2 games of the year. He's also intriguing because of his upcoming schedule, getting the Vikings and Commanders twice in 3 of the next 4 weeks, who are both top 12 in fantasy points allowed to the position this year. If you're a Josh Jacobs manager, you have to be one of the happiest people on the planet right now because that man has been on an absolute tear. However, he's a player I 1000% want insured going into the fantasy playoffs, so I would stash Zamir White. Jacobs is currently 3rd in rushing attempts this year, and if anything were to happen to him, I would lean towards Zamir White getting a bulk of those carries. I feel like a doomsday prepper suggesting all these handcuffed running backs, but the last thing you want to happen is for your top 10 running back to sustain an injury, and you don't have their backup who would instantly become a plug and play into your lineup. If you're in a super flex league, this stash is for you. Jordan Love, quarterback for the Green Bay Packers, is still widely available. It does sound like Aaron Rodgers is going to play in week 13. However, earlier this week, Aaron Rodgers said that he'll, quote, keep an open mind to the organization shutting him down this year. That's not the plan of action yet, but considering the Packers are 4-8 and 3 games out of a playoff spot, a lot would need to go right down the stretch for this team to make a postseason run. Should the team decide to shut down Rodgers and give Jordan Love some run, he gets some juicy matchups against Miami, Minnesota, and Detroit to close out the season. All right, y'all, before I get out of here, remember, if you want your chance at winning a signed Justin Jefferson Minnesota Vikings jersey, courtesy of our friends at Pristine Auction, you need to subscribe to the FantasyPros YouTube channel right now and comment below on this video. That is it. That is all you need to do. We'll be announcing a winner right here on the channel, so make sure to turn on those notifications so you can be alerted when new episodes are up and to claim your prize when we announce it.
Thanks for tuning in to the FantasyPros YouTube channel. Don't forget to check out our featured videos, and while you're at it, make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at FantasyPros, so you can get the latest news and updates to give you the edge you need in your fantasy league.